So I am live and I'm going to quickly share this over on Facebook and then I'm going to get started while people come on in. It is, so let's go page. Oh, I swear they make you take these pictures for the, what is it called? Like the cover photo. And I swear I hate them every single time. Live on YouTube. So even though I kind of did the same topic last night on Facebook, but may as well. Hi there. So may as well just get it going. So it is Saturday morning. We are having a windstorm. So this is going to be very quick. I shouldn't say that. It's going to be shorter than it usually is because I don't know if I'm going to lose power. We lost power yesterday, right after I finished my live on Facebook. So I don't know if we're going to lose power again. But anyway, okay, I'm getting distracted. So hi Rhonda. Hi Shawnee. So I wanted to talk today. A friend of mine, Diane, messaged me earlier this week about hi Kathy. The windstorm was horrible. I was up all night. I'm exhausted. And what sucks is that my boyfriend's sick today. This is all information you guys don't need. And so I'm in charge of 5 dogs by myself. So I don't get to take a nap. He needs his rest. And I am so tired, but whatever. Let's get into it. So a friend of mine, Diane, messaged me earlier this week, and she thought that this would be a good topic. And I agree. But her thing was that, what if you get new information? Like you think you're feeding your dogs well or whatever, training your dogs well, raising your dogs well, and then you get new information and it completely shakes you up because you now look at everything that you're doing and you think that, oh my gosh, I did all of this wrong. And now you're doubting yourself. I have been there many, many times. The first time was nearly 10 years ago when when we adopted Rodrigo and Sydney. We adopted Rodrigo at an adoption event. And 2-3 days later, I decided I wanted 2 puppies because I thought, oh, they'll keep each other company. We wanted to have 2 dogs anyway. We'll be giving 2 dogs a home, blah, blah, blah. So I called the rescue and said, can we have a second puppy? And they said, yeah, we have 1 girl in the litter. We'll give her to you. She'll be perfect. And she was, Sydney. And it wasn't until after I had made the plans, paid the adoption fees, that I decided to Google litter mates, like raising litter mates. Good morning, you guys. And when I did that, if you guys have ever done, if you ever raised 2 puppies at once, you may already know, but there's a thing called litter mate syndrome. And basically the concern is that people will adopt 2 puppies and they'll assume that kind of the puppies will just keep each other company and be there for each other. And it takes less work off of the humans in the house. Not the case at all. A lot of trainers are concerned that the puppies will bond with each other and not to the humans in the family. And there will be training issues. There'll be fighting between the puppies as they try to fight for dominance, all these type of things. And I was completely floored. But I already loved my puppies and I wasn't planning on canceling and not taking them both home. So I started looking for a trainer. And that made all the difference. And we now have 2 sets of litter mates, Rodrigo, Sydney, Scout, and Zoe. And we did not experience a lot of the things that the training community warned you about. But I think the reason why we didn't experience these things is because I got the information and I educated myself. So why this story about litter mates? Well, it applies to feeding our dogs as well. So as you're educating yourself about raw feeding and trying to understand everything that's going on, you're going to get new information. And that information is going to make you think, oh, I'm supposed to be doing that too. And my thought is that, yeah, it's going to be frustrating. I give myself 5 minutes to be frustrated whenever something shakes up my routine. And then I have to actually look at it from a distance, don't get emotional, and ask myself, does this apply to my dogs? Because in my experience, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't apply to my dogs. I'm doing just fine. Other things, maybe I can make a small tweak that's not really that big of a deal. An example of that is I was watching a video that Karen and Rodney did. And it was they were making dog food. And in the video, they added oysters. And I was just like, why are they adding oysters? And it says it's the source of zinc. And so I was like, gosh, I never thought about that. Am I adding it, are my dogs getting zinc from other places? This is before my spreadsheet, but the reason why eventually I created a spreadsheet is because if someone tells you, oh, I add this food because I want to make sure my dogs get this nutrient, instead of me running out and buying the food, I'm going to check my spreadsheet first to make sure my dogs aren't getting it elsewhere. Then if they need it, then I might add the food. So I started adding oysters. But for 3 years, my dogs were kind of low on zinc. And but it didn't do any damage. They are fine. They are healthy. There is no reason to freak out or panic. There are people out there that will try and tell you that if you don't do everything exactly right from day one, you're going to be harming your dog. I've seen discussions where someone has told a new raw feeder, like, good luck killing your dog because you're not feeding raw right. And I don't think people mean to be that nasty. I think that with social media, it becomes so easy for us to get frustrated and lash out at people. And since we're not face to face, we don't see the feedback from our words, if that makes sense. We don't see the consequences. So, and plus, if it's a group of people who feel like they're super right, they just get a little spun up in that. And I've learned to just walk away from those discussions. In fact, this past week, I left 2 raw feeding groups, and they're my co-op group and another local group. I left those groups because there were 2 discussions where someone recommended one of the groups that are like, it's my way or the highway type of groups. And I don't believe that it's really healthy to tell new raw feeders that this is who you should follow. I think that new raw feeders need to be able to be exposed to all manners of going about or approaching feeding their dogs, only because you never know what's going to resonate with one person and not resonate with another person, if that makes sense. So when it comes to new information, I take it this way. I look at it, I consider it, I look at my dogs. Are my dogs healthy? What was the last blood panel like? Not that blood panels check nutrition, but still, blood panels will tell you if your dog is on the verge of some type of health issue, which could be related to diet. Are my dogs having different behavior? Is anything going on? The most recent thing was with Rodrigo and his weight loss. And so that was something that I had to pay attention to. And at the same time, I kept hearing, I already knew about EPI, which is exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, which basically means the pancreas stops working and he's not producing enzymes to help digest and absorb food. So lipase, amylase, and protease. So the lipase is to digest fat. Amylase is to digest, fruits and vegetables, and protease is to digest protein. And he had nothing. So he was basically starving to death. So the information that I'm going to get with regard to him, I'm going to listen to. And of course, I had to make adjustments to his diet, small adjustments. I just had to add a digestive enzyme, but I did have to make adjustments to his diet. But there's no reason to, in my opinion, doubt yourself, because all of this is a journey. And although I've been doing this for close to 7 years, I'm constantly learning, and I'm learning from other raw feeders, whether the person's brand new and they just ask a question that I never thought to ask before, or someone who's been around for 20, 30, 40 years, and they kind of put me back on track of, hey, we weren't doing all of this, crazy spreadsheets, software programs, whatever, 30, 40 years ago. So it's kind of important to be a part of the community and ask your questions. So I've said this in prior videos, but I'm going to say it again now. The only 2 raw feeding groups that I recommend are Raw Feeding 101 and Raw Feeding University over on Facebook. And the reason why I recommend those is because, one, they're very open to multiple ways to feeding raw. So if you want to get down and dirty into the macro and micronutrients, you believe in understanding the science of raw feeding, if there is such a thing, if you really want to be able to balance your dog's diet based on NRC guidelines or AFCO, or the UK version of AFCO, it starts with an F, but I never remember the letters. If that is what you want to do, they will support that. If you want to do 80-10-10 plus, which is what I do, they will support that. If you want to do pre-made, they will support that. If you want to do hybrid, they will support that. These are groups that will help you along your path, depending upon what you're going to do, because not everyone can feed raw the same way. It really depends on, our time. the dogs that we have, what our budget is, what our resources are. There are just so many ways. So if anyone is coming and telling you that they are the only ones that know how to feed raw appropriately or correctly, I'm going to call BS on that, because I honestly don't think anyone knows. I think a lot of people are close. I think there is a lot of great information out there, but I don't care if someone is a veterinarian. I don't care if someone has been doing it for 50 years. No one truly knows, because no one can come into my house and tell me what each of my dogs needs. No one can come and look at Rodrigo and say, you know what, he needs more enzymes in his diet than your other dogs, unless they look at his records. So I always think of it that way. Before I freak out with new information, I remind myself that I am the expert in my 5 dogs, no one else. So although it's great information to have, it's not necessary to jump all over it. So that was a lot of word vomit right there. So I want to go back. I see you guys are commenting. Thank you for joining me this morning. Good morning, David. Rhonda says, got up early this morning and walked almost 14, 5, and 3-year-old dogs for 3 miles. Good for you. I want to walk my dogs this morning, but the wind has me scared because branches are falling. Barney says, good morning. Totally agree about those militant raw feeders who attack others. So discouraging and not helpful at all. It is. It's really, I think all of us have been there at some point in time where we've had someone be more aggressive than they need to be. And I mean, I will admit, full disclosure, I don't feel that I was ever a militant raw feeder, but I have what I call it is stolen someone's joy. So I don't know if I've said this in a live before, but a few years ago, someone contacted me and told me that they were going to start their dog on raw that night. They were tired of the allergies and the illnesses. They were done. They were starting raw. So they went to the store and they got a family pack of chicken thighs on sale, and they were starting right then. And I was just like, oh my God, that's great. So what are you going to do about organ meat? Did you get anything for that? And they were like, no, I just got the chicken breast. And I was just like, oh, okay. And I didn't tell them that they were doing it wrong, but I just started asking questions about what they were doing. And I thought that was the best way to do it, that if I'm asking questions, then it's a discussion and they won't get defensive. But they got freaked out and panicked because they were like, oh crap, am I doing this wrong? Should I not be doing this? And I honestly had no business giving this person advice. And now looking back with more years under my belt, they were doing it right. If anyone is going to start their dog on pre-made raw, I always recommend starting with one piece of meat. Don't try and make a balanced diet. Don't go for the 80-10-10. If it's a small dog, go for chicken wings. If it's a big dog, go for chicken quarters, and just start there and see how your dog does for a week or two, and then slowly add in the other foods, because you want to acclimate your dog to this diet. And I didn't do that. I didn't know. And I sort of freaked this guy out, and he didn't start raw. And so that's the thing that I always comes to mind, is that conversation whenever I'm speaking to someone who's brand new to raw feeding. Is I always talk about, well, this is what I do, or this is my experience. And then I direct people to someone who can give them help, because if it's something that they want, because I honestly think that I want to think that everyone means well when they're giving advice. I just think that we need to take a step back and recognize that my opinion and my experience isn't necessarily going to be your opinion and your experience. So we can have a conversation and trade notes and learn from each other, but it's inappropriate for me to even insinuate that you're doing something wrong when I don't know your story and I don't know your whole dog's diet. So if someone comes to me and says, I'm feeding my dog, like someone, what were they feeding their dog? Can't remember. Someone recently told me something. Oh, they feed their dog like over 25% vegetables. And I was just like, wow, that's a lot. And I don't even remember the reason why they fed their dogs this way. But instead of saying, wow, that's way too many vegetables, I would never feed that much, and you really need to read this book by this person and this book by this person, you need to follow this person. Instead, I just asked, why so many vegetables? And we had a great discussion. It was a while ago. I don't remember why so many vegetables, but there was no need for me to tell her that she was wrong. And there was no need for me to change what I'm doing and start feeding my dogs more vegetables. It's just a discussion. So anyway, Rhonda says, I believe some people want to be nasty while hiding behind social media. There is that too. Hey, Roddy. Oh, oh, Cosmic, thank you so much. Cosmic did, I don't have my phone here, so I can't show you, but I will show it when I receive it. A beautiful watercolor of Apollo based on a picture that I posted on Instagram. And I wasn't go I'm so excited because my boyfriend, I showed it to him and he was just like, so are you going to get it? And he's like really excited to get it. And so I so appreciate it. You were like amazingly talented. It's beautiful. Roddy says, stuff to you that helps no one. Find what works for your dogs and stick to it. Yes. Oh, wait. I think he says, there's always obstacles and new info to deal with, especially as I've seen the raw popularity grow over the years. The fear of starting raw is hard enough without people saying negative stuff to you. That helps no one. Find what works for your dogs and stick to it. You know, that is so very true with I hate calling raw feeding trendy, but it's kind of gotten trendy. And I can't tell you how many times I hear the words complete and balanced when it comes to raw feeding. I heard it last night when I was at a pet store. Someone approached me and asked, how can I, what can I add to my dog's diet to make it complete and balanced? I get emails about this. That's the two groups that I left were because someone was asking about making a complete and balanced meal. And they were like, oh, well, you need to go to this group and they will tell you how to make a complete and balanced meal. And they're not wrong. The group that they recommended would tell them how to do it. I just honestly think that it is such a complicated path to feeding raw that many new raw feeders aren't prepared to do that. And I think that I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I was brand new to raw feeding, I knew nothing. I didn't even know that people did it themselves. I knew nothing. I thought it was something you had to buy. And I was looking around like, where do I buy this stuff? Do I have to order it? I didn't understand. So if someone would have come to me and told me that I need to get this big, thick book that has all the guidelines for what dogs need, that was written back in the 80s, that I needed to somehow convert that book into a spreadsheet to help me calculate everything that my dogs needs based on their age, their weight, their activity level, their breed, whatever the case may be. And then I had to go and source all these random ingredients to feed my dogs. I would not have fed raw. I just would have been like, okay, never mind, because it sounds way too complicated and overwhelming. And you're already overwhelmed by, like, with a lot of people that I talk to, their veterinarian isn't on board, maybe their partner isn't on board, and they're a little nervous about doing it. Their friends think they're crazy to want to feed, their dogs raw meat. I can't tell you the number of people who tell me that a family member or a friend thinks their dog is going to go wild and become bloodthirsty because they have raw meat. It's like, oh, are you kidding? So they're already a little nervous. And then you jump on that like a stack of information that you need to learn all of this in order to feed your dogs. And it's just like, I don't buy it. I don't knock it, but I don't buy it. It's not the only way. And so that's why I'm like really hesitant about pushing people to the complicated level. I think that if someone, as they're learning, realizes that that's the path they want to go down, then I say, yeah, there is a great group that will help you get there. But for the most part, I tell people complete and balanced is a marketing term by kibble companies and does not apply to raw feeding, in my opinion, because every single dog is different. So what is complete and balanced? So, I mean, most of us, I would think, are probably raising multiple dogs. And that may mean that we're making batches of food that we're feeding all the dogs. Are you saying that this batch of food is complete and balanced for all 5 of my dogs? I don't think so. I think every dog is different. I think we are close. I think there are a lot of people out there that have a piece of the puzzle. And I think as we communicate and work together and share our experiences with each other, the puzzle becomes more and more complete. But I don't think that any one person has the answer. It's just not true. So I'm going back and making sure I don't, I believe some people, yeah, I read that. Okay, sorry. Marnie says she loves those 2 Facebook groups. I do. I really love them. What I love about them is that I can ask a question and get some really great feedback from people in the group and the admins, especially there's one person in Raw Feeding University, or 2 people, Ronnie and Michelle. There are others, but Ronnie and Michelle are 2 people who I think are really, really smart. And Ronnie has taken the extra steps to take courses in animal nutrition. So she actually can formulate a balanced diet, but she doesn't hold everything onto NRC. That's just not how she is. She looks at the whole dog. Because again, another thing about the NRC is if you have a dog that has a health issue, does the NRC cover that? I mean, there's so many things about our dogs individually that we have to think about. David says, I'm with you, Kim. This is way over processed by everyone you wants to put their 2 cents in. You stay your course because you're spot on. Every dog is different. Thanks, David. Shawnee says, Kimberly, I finally found a dog nutritionist not far from me. Good, but I will have to drive some distance. What question should I be asking since this is all new to me? If you're going to work with a dog nutritionist, I would be curious to know basically how are they going to evaluate your dog? So do they need to look at your dog's medical records? Do they need to look at, like, do they have like some type of questionnaire that you're going to answer? I worked with a dog nutritionist years ago, 2 of them actually, one for a review and one because I wanted to understand my dog. And I found it really helpful. I didn't ask her any questions. I just let her do her work. And then when she gave me the results, then I asked questions about to better understand what was going on. And we just sat on the phone and went over each of my dogs and what they were doing. And we went over like food intolerances. There are questions like, for instance, all of my dogs have chicken intolerances. That is not a surprise. A lot of people say that chicken intolerances don't exist. They do. The reason why they exist is because, as I understand it, if you look at a lot of processed food and treats, you will find chicken on the ingredients list. And also all of the vaccinations are grown in chicken embryos. So we as humans and the animals, our pets, are overexposed to chicken. And that's why some people feel that there are so many chicken sensitivities in pets. But with that being said, my question was always, so, okay, well, chicken, what about duck and turkey and quail and pheasant? And then what about eggs? Because some dogs that can't have chicken also can't have other poultry or eggs. Some dogs can. And it's a good idea to just better understand why that is the case for your dog. With my dogs, I don't feed chicken. Rodrigo also can't have turkey or pheasant. My other dogs can. But they all do great on chicken eggs. I try to get them pasture raised. Well, I try to get them from local farms. And when I can't, I go to Costco and I get the pasture raised, certified organic, certified humane eggs. And it's $5 for a 24 egg carton, which is really a good deal. But my dogs do great on it. So if you have any type of sensitivities, I think it's good to bring that up. But mostly I would be interested in seeing, if I were working with a nutritionist, what they come back to me with. And then from there, come up with some questions about what's going on with your dogs. And, also have a discussion when you go and meet with your nutritionist, like about what made you want to do this. Why are you switching the diet? Why are you interested in this? What is it about your dog? Is it just because you're now learning different things, or is there something up with your dog that prompted you to want to make a change? Because that is something that they can delve into a little bit more while they're doing the consultation with you. Okay, so that's just me. That's me. Kathy says, as a new raw feeder, it has been an experience. It takes time to figure out what to do, how to do it, and what works best for your dog. It can be overwhelming and terrifying. Thank you for open and non-judgmental forum you provide. Oh, well, thank you so much. That's what I try to be. And I know what you mean. Another example of being overwhelmed, a few years ago, Dogs Naturally magazine published an article based on Steve Brown's work. And for those of you guys who don't know, Steve Brown is like a master formulator. A lot of raw food brands want to work with him. I have his software program, the Animal Diet Formulator, that's now sold through the Royal Animal Health University. And he's pretty brilliant. Steve Brown he talked about balancing fats. And so Dogs Naturally magazine wrote an article about how we need to balance fats. Now I'm trotting along. Oh, I'm doing great. I'm feeding my dogs a raw food diet. I'm killing it. I have books out, and I'm doing great. Or actually, this book wasn't out. I was working on this book when this information came out. I was writing it. And I hear about we're supposed to be balancing fats. So the long and short of the article was that if you're feeding poultry, then you need to add these type of fats. And by fats is like oils. to the diet. If you're feeding a ruminating protein, so beef, you need to add these fats to the diet. I can't remember what was what, but it was listing things like hemp oil, almond oil, not almond oil, walnut oil, and all these different things that you need to add, chia seeds, to a dog's diet. In fact, I actually have a graph in here. I don't think I can find it really quickly, but I have a graph in here that goes over the fats that you're supposed to add. But I don't know. I haven't looked in this book in so long. Wow, this is a really nice book. If you guys haven't bought this book already, buy it. It's a really, yeah, I'm biased, but it's a really nice book. I think it's cool that you can self-publish books. If you have a book idea and you want to do it and you've been holding out, let me just tell you, this is really easy to do. And I highly encourage you to do it. So anyway, but there is a list of oils that you're supposed to add to the dog's diet. And I'm sitting here like, so now you're telling me that I need to go out and buy all these different oils and add them to my dog's diet? This is insane. Who feeds their dogs this way? Who eats them this way themselves? This makes no sense to me. And it wasn't until like everyone's having discussions in groups about this. Do you buy it? Do you not buy it? And one person finally says, you know what? If you're already rotating proteins, you're naturally balancing fats. And that is what I latched onto. And I was like, okay, well, I'm doing that, so I'm not going to worry about it. And what it came down to is someone else explained to me that the balancing of fats is more for people who are only feeding chicken or only feeding beef, or, just basically only feeding two proteins, that they might need to balance fats. I didn't really read the article that way. I read it as definitively we need to be doing this. And it's overwhelming. And you don't want to screw your dog. You don't want, 5-10 years to go by and you realize you've been doing something terrible and your dog could have lived a longer life, or your dog is now have this illness because you were doing something wrong. All that stuff gets into our head. I just don't think it's real. I think it's just fear. And unfortunately, there are people who feed on that fear. The kibble companies do it to try to get us to stick with kibble. The veterinarian community, some people in the veterinarian community are doing it to keep us from doing raw feeding. And then there are people within the raw feeding community who are doing it in order to sell us services so that we will lean on them. They will take over, creating recipes and formulating meals for our dogs. The problem is that I think that if you want to have a meal formulated for your dogs, you should do it. It's really eye-opening and it can probably save you some time and headache and stress, but it's not necessary. It's so easy. And if you do Facebook, go over to my Facebook page and you can find where I have done videos where I'm just making meals. And it's literally takes minutes to do. And by minutes, I mean like 20-30 minutes. I can whip up a week's worth of food for my dogs. In fact, I'll be doing it tomorrow. No, I'll be doing it. Yeah, tomorrow. Rabbit. I'll be making rabbit. This is what I do when I make rabbit. I get ground rabbit from a local farm. That's the meat, the bone, and the organs. And then I mix in Dr. Harvey's base mix. The reason why I do Dr. Harvey's is because it makes it so that I don't have to go and add in certain nutrients, that if I think the rabbit isn't going to have enough zinc in it, for example, I don't know if it does or not. I have to look at my spreadsheet, but if normally I would add in oysters, but when I have Dr. Harvey's, I don't have to add in all these random ingredients. I don't like to have a meal that has 18 or 20 ingredients in it. So I just use the Dr. Harvey's. It has everything in there. I make everything in a huge batch. I do not follow the instructions on Dr. Harvey's because I am a rebel like that. And apparently I don't follow anyone's instructions. I do what's right for my dogs. And this is going well. And the reason why I know I'm doing well is because when I had my dogs hair analysis tested for their nutrient levels, everyone was doing great. So I am convinced that it just does not need to be complicated. Cosmic says, thank you. I appreciate all the information that people like you put out and help people with raw. It's a small thank you so much. I'm happy to help. And I have to tell you, everything that I put out there, I learned from other people too. I learned from the questions that you ask. I learned from the things that you share. I mean, Roddy and I will go back and forth for a day in a comment chain, just going, he's really tons of information. And it's one of those things where you do learn. I mean, when I first started, and I've told Roddy this many times, if you would have seen my countertop the number of supplements I had on my countertop. I did a video where I showed all the supplements that I have, but I don't give all my dogs all these supplements every day. But I do have a lot of supplements, just they all have different uses. And some of them I'm going to finish up the package and I'm not going to give them anymore because I don't really think is doing anything for my dogs. Other ones, I just alternate with different things. But it used to take me at least 30 minutes to make my dog's meals after I'm adding all the powders and things. I mean, it was insane, the number of supplements. And if you go to any type of trade show, most of the booths are going to be supplement booths. There are now several websites for pets that are just supplement based. And that's how they make money. And once I started seeing how big the supplement industry is for pets, it started making me not want to support that industry because I'm not convinced that our pets need all of those things. And so I started dialing back all the supplements. And man, I saved myself so much money. See you later, Roddy. I have a file for him since the day I brought him home. I will bring the folder with me when I go and have the consultations. Thanks again. Great. Shawnee, I would love to, send me a message and let me know how it goes because I would really be interested in knowing what that experience is like. Buster and Rose, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge. Thank you. After tons of hours watching YouTube videos and reading from the pros like you, I'm not a pro. I started feeding raw to my 6-month-old. Yay! Great. Congratulations. What is your Facebook page name? Oh, thank you. I never keep the tail wagging. That's my blog's name. I'm sorry. Here, I'm going to put a link to my Facebook page in the notes or in the comments so you don't have to go looking for it. There's my Facebook. And then this is my blog. And then I have another blog that's just for fun. May as well put that out there too. I got to wash my hair. Gosh, it's a mess. Now, Cosmic says, I'm glad you brought up Harvey's base mix in your vitamin video. Normally my dog hates stuff like that, but she loves it. Dr. Harvey seems like they recommend way too much for my dog to eat. It's funny because when I was looking at when I first got my first bag, I was just like, no, that doesn't work for me. And since I make food in a batch, if I follow the instructions on the bag, I would be using so much. And I don't believe, as a raw feeder, I don't believe that my dogs need all of that. I believe that when it comes to the brand, I don't think that they're like trying to cheat me or anything. I just think that they have to think about people who are adding the bare minimum to the bowl, and then they're using the base mix to balance. So I'm not using their base mix to balance my meals. I'm just using it to add additional nutrients to my meals. I think the bulk of the nutrients my dogs get are from the muscle meat, the organ meat, and the bone. And I'm trying to think of anything else I add, like I add fish to my dog's diet. So for the omega-3 fatty acids, I think that they're getting it from everything that I'm adding to the bowl prior to the Dr. Harvey's. So what I do is I mix everything in. I have 8-quart stainless steel bowls. I probably have 10 of them because they're expensive, but whenever they go on sale, I buy. And so I have a lot of them. And I usually anywhere between 4 and 6 bowls going, depending upon how much food I'm going to be making. And what I'll do is I will put 1 cup of Dr. Harvey's base mix, the dry, and then add the oil and the hot water and let it hydrate into each bowl. And then within each bowl, I'm trying to estimate anywhere between about 6 pounds of meat, 6 to 8 pounds of organ meat and muscle meat, blah, 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 will go into each bowl, and then I'll mix it up. So I don't know how that translates to their instructions, but I know that it's not the same. If I were to follow their instructions, my food would just, like with the Paradigm, which is green because of all the greens in it, everything would just look green. Whereas the way I make it, it doesn't look that way. And I am trying to think of where you can go, because I have pictures of meals. If you go to my blog and I'll put the link here, and you go to recipes and just look, you'll have to look for them because I haven't done a recipe in a while. I need to get back on that. But you'll see pictures of my meals. And I have quite a few pictures of meals that are done with Dr. Harvey's. It doesn't look like there's a ton of whatever, green or with the raw vibrance is more colorful because there's carrots and other, just red vegetables and orange vegetables and green vegetables. So it's a little more colorful, but you don't see the bulk of the meal doesn't look like Dr. Harvey's. It looks like meat. And so that's kind of how I feed my dogs. And I've been doing it have I been feeding Dr. Harvey's for a year now? I don't know, but for quite a while. I think, yeah, for a year, a little over a year. So I think I'm trying to make sure don't want to lose you guys. Okay, here we go. So it's Buster and Rose says it's been a little over a month and his poops are all over the place, sometimes hard, sometimes soft, sometimes diarrhea. He's vomited an undigested meal, vomits bile in the morning. Aha! I actually have answers to all of that. Now, before I give you my answers, let me just say, and I always say this to people, I'm not a veterinarian and I'm not a nutritionist. So if your dog is behaving in any way that makes you concerned about an illness, talk to your veterinarian. It's very important. Even if your veterinarian is not on board with raw, I still think it's important for you to have an open discussion with your veterinarian. And I have actually worked with many veterinarians that were anti-raw, and I've been able to turn them around. Once they saw that I was, one, this is what I'm doing, and two, I'm educating myself, they were a little more on board with me feeding raw and willing to help me. But the reason why I think it's important to have the veterinarian in the conversation is because if something is up with your dog, your veterinarian has all the facts, not just part of the story. And I know this isn't always easy for everyone. I'm lucky because I have a really great veterinarian who supports what I'm doing, but I just want to always put that out there. However, in my experience with my dogs, when it comes to the poop with new raw feeding, it was mostly, and this happened with like Rodrigo and Sydney, not with Scout and Zoe so much because I started them at 6 weeks old. So they just took to it like that. And a little bit with Apollo. We started him at 7 months old when he joined our family. The poop was a little all over the place, sometimes soft, sometimes a little diarrhea, sometimes hard. And it was just basically the body adjusting to it. Some people will call it a detox. I just see it as the body was adjusting to the new diet and, kind of getting rid of, I don't know. I don't know if it's, like if there's residual stuff from kibble in the body or what, but it was just sort of like the body adjusting. So I didn't worry too much about it. When it comes to vomiting, my dogs will vomit and I just basically pay attention. And this is a good thing for anyone. If you're brand new to raw feeding or if you've been doing it for a long time, it's always a good idea to pay attention to what you're feeding your dogs. And so you can connect it to how they're responding. So if you notice that every single time I feed blank, my dog vomits, then maybe there's something wrong with blank. In my experience, it's duck necks. I don't feed my dogs whole duck necks anymore because, or I should say this, they don't get them as often as they used to get them. I used to feed them like every day, every other day, I throw a duck neck in the bowl. Now they'll get them every now and then. And the reason why is because if the bones don't all digest, they'll just sit in the stomach. And then in the middle of the night or early in the morning, that bone will be irritating to the gut and they'll vomit it up. And so just to get it out of the system. And so I just got tired of that happening. And it didn't happen with all the dogs and like all the time, but it was like one or two of the dogs would have this problem. And it was never the same dog. So it wasn't like, okay, well, I just won't feed Sydney duck necks. It was always eats one of the dogs. And I got tired of finding little dried up bone where they went and hid in a corner and vomited it up. But that being said, I switched from duck necks to duck feet because they don't have that issue with duck feet. They process it a lot better. They still have other bones in their diet, but just not really duck necks that much anymore. So that was one change that I made, and that resolved the vomiting. The early morning vomiting, where it's just bile, I have always called that hunger pukes. And what it basically means is that my dogs are used to eating at a certain time in the morning. When they hear me get up and I'm getting ready, they know that food is coming. Or they just know that around this time I'm used to eating. And one thing that I notice is that hunger pukes usually happened on the weekend because maybe I slept late. And is that Billy? Oh, how funny. Billy just sent me a message. Anyway, so what was I saying? Okay, so they would do hunger pukes. And what's happening is that the stomach acid, the bile is filling the gut. I don't know if I'm using the right words, but basically the gut is preparing to eat some food, and no food is coming. The gut gets sour, so then they start vomiting, and that's when you get the yellow foamy vomit, and it's hunger pukes. So what I've learned to do is you can do two things. If you have a dog that's doing this all the time, then I would feed a heavier meal at night and basically set the alarm in the morning to make sure that I'm feeding in the morning. And on the weekends, like today, I slept late because I was up all night because of this storm and we have the generator going. It was just a mess. So I got up this morning and all the dogs got raw goat's milk so that no hunger pukes. Everyone has raw goat's milk in their tummy. I will take a quart and split it between all 5 dogs. And then maybe in a couple hours, I'll actually feed them a light breakfast. But that is something that gets rid of the hunger pukes. But when it comes to the poop, just pay attention to how it's going. If poop, in my experience, if poop is too hard, then I look back and see, am I adding too much bone to the diet? What's going on? Do I need to add more organ meat to the diet? And I adjust accordingly. If the poop is too soft, especially if it's combined with gas, then I will look and see, am I adding too much organ meat to the diet? This past week, a couple of the dogs had loose stool, and it's because I was adding extra heart to the diet, which can be rich. And so it impacts them, but it wasn't the end of the world. It's an adjustment and everything is going to be fine. But again, if any of this is combined with like listless behavior or any type of behavior changes that you're concerned about, it is okay to talk to your vet and just be safe than sorry. Sometimes it's just a matter of helping you feel okay, and so you can move on to the next step. And so Marnie says, I'm planning to use Steve Brown's recipes for my new puppy who is already weaned raw just to get us going. He'll get more variety as he gets older. I'm going to prep some stuff this weekend. Fantastic. My older dog needs less fat, so I do something different from him. Every dog is different. Yep. We have a puppy. I mean, he's a year old now, but he needs more bone or calcium in his diet because he's still growing. And I'm going to continue adding additional calcium to his diet until he's about 18 months old. And then I will start feeding him exactly what the other dogs are doing. But for now, I make the big batch of food for everyone. But for Apollo, I add in a scoop of seaweed calcium, or sometimes I have ground eggshell, or sometimes I will do, I will just do extra bone. But usually it's seaweed calcium or ground eggshell. Because ground eggshell is 100% calcium and there's no phosphorus to offset it. Oh, green tripe. That's another thing I'll add to his diet is green tripe because it has calcium and phosphorus at a good balance. But one thing I'll do is I'll add additional heart meat to Apollo's diet to offset the calcium and also to give him more vitamin B. Growing dogs need that. And Cosmic Kiori says, I found out from their customer service, you can freeze it for up to 2 months. So when I prep food, I can have it. Yep. That's what I do is whenever I prep food, I try to prep a week at a time. I would actually do more, but it's just so much. But yeah, I try to do as much as possible. And it just depends on how much I can get thawed. And I grind and mix and do everything. And I have really huge containers that I have it stacked up. But usually everything I do is a week at a time. I want to get to a point where I can do 2 to 3 weeks at a time. But I need to have space to do that. So we are building me a she shed this summer or spring, summer, so that I have a dedicated space for meal prep. And I'm really excited about it. Buster and Rose says, I know the good, but want to know the ugly too, so I can relax a bit and know this is also what others have gone through. Yeah, it's funny because people always talk about, and this would be a good video, and maybe this is what I'll do next week. So thank you, Buster and Rose, for the inspiration. I'll be sure to write this down. Let's talk about the benefits of raw feeding and then the truth. Because people will give you a list of the benefits of raw feeding, the smaller, less smelly poop, no more, allergies, healthier weight and blah, 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 blah. But sometimes, that's all great and good. But if you put your dog on raw and you don't experience all those benefits, you think you're doing something wrong. So next week, that's what I'll do is we'll go over the benefits of raw feeding, and then I'll tell you the truth of what I experienced so that you'll know. And for those of you guys who are new, you'll be prepared. For those of you guys who've been feeding raw, you can share what your experience has been too. So Rhonda says, do you put salt in your dog's food? Why or why not? I don't put salt in my dog's food. I know that there are people who do put sodium in their dog's food. I think that there is sodium that's naturally occurring in food for dogs. I'm going to put a link here. So I have a nutrient spreadsheet that I let other people, use, or you can copy it. You have to subscribe to my newsletter. And my newsletter goes out every Tuesday morning, and there's a link to it. But when you subscribe, you'll get an email back saying, thanks for subscribing. Here's some free stuff. And they'll take you to a link to that nutrient spreadsheet. And you can look down. I think sodium is listed. I haven't looked at it in a while, and I need to update it this weekend. But you can see what's in different foods. And so I do ferment vegetables for my dogs. And so I do add Himalayan salt when I'm doing fermented vegetables. But the bacteria, as it's fermenting, that it eats up the salt. So it's not like it's a ton of salt in their food. But I don't actively go and add salt. I know that there are people who do that. I don't know why. I'm assuming it's because in their meal, they've found that there's not enough sodium. But when I've been using the animal diet formulator and formulating meals, I just haven't seen a need to add salt. I've seen an option to add salt, but I just haven't seen a need to add salt. I will instead add like kelp is an alternative in the list when I think of when they're trying to up different nutrients instead of, because salt isn't just for sodium. Salt is for other nutrients as well. It's just not something I would actively add. And then there's things like, table salt is not something that you would add to a dog's meal. You would actually need to go and get a dietary sodium to add to a dog's meal if it's something that you're going to add. But I hope that answers your question. Long story short, no, I don't. Buster and Rose, thanks for the tips. Oh, great. Yes, I would love if you do a video about the truth. I will do that next week. Cosmic says, is it really a she shed or a dog cave since it's technically for the dogs? That's actually, or just plainly the dog house. Maybe that's what I'll just call it, the dog house or the raw house. Next wave. Watching from all the way across the world. Wow. And Libya, welcome. Thanks for all the information. We changed to raw about 3 years now, and all is good. Never been better. Fantastic. I love hearing from people in other countries. Hi, Diane. Diane's the one that inspired today's video. You may have talked about this, but do you buy frozen food, unthaw, prep, freeze again? Yes, I do. Or is it okay to buy unthawed food and freeze before I freeze? Yes, it is. So everything that I buy for my dogs is already frozen. Because I buy everything in bulk. It comes in big boxes. Everything's frozen. Sometimes I thaw a little so I can break it up into packages to fit better in the freezer. Sometimes I just put it in the freezer until I need it. And then I thaw, like today, I'll take out rabbit, thaw it on the counter, and then mix it in and make dog food, put it into freezer safe containers, put it back in the freezer. It isn't often that I buy thawed food and freeze it, but occasionally I have friends who they will have friends who have farms and they raise their own meat. And when they slaughter their animals, they'll give me the stuff that they're not going to feed. They're not going to eat themselves, and they don't feed their dogs raw. So my dogs do well. So that I get fresh, and it's basically, I get it in a bucket from the pig or from the cow, and I bring it home and I put it into freezer safe containers and put it in the freezer. I don't do it because I'm trying to kill off any type of bacteria or parasites. There's no bacteria, there's no parasites. Well, there is bacteria. Bacteria is everywhere, but there's no parasites to worry about in this case. I just do it because there's nothing I can do with the food at the moment. And so I just put it in the freezer until I'm ready to use it. Oh, thank you for signing up for my newsletter. Some of Steve Brown's recipes have iodized salt for iodine so that you're not feeding kelp every day. I actually I prefer to use either kelp, and then I alternate with green lip mussel powder for iodine. I believe that there's also iodine in eggs. But again, I would have to look at my, the green lip mussel. The reason why I say that is because when I do the animal diet formulator, which was also created by Steve Brown, and I was looking to balance the iodine, green lip mussel powder was an option. And I didn't even realize that it could be an option, but it helped me balance out a meal. So that's why I use green lip mussel powder. And then, because I know that some dogs actually have a sensitivity to kelp. And so they either can't have it all the time or they can't have it at all. And then the other thing is, I really want to say that iodine is in eggs. I just don't know if it's enough for dogs, or how often or how many eggs you need to feed for them to get enough iodine. But that's very interesting. Thank you. Okay. And Diane says, I got 5 tubs and need part of it in. Can I saw it with a hacksaw? 5 tubes. Okay, I'm not bothering with you today. But you know what's so funny is I used to buy bully sticks in bulk, and they were way too long. And so I would use it wasn't a hacksaw. I don't know tool names, but it's that tool where it's the dial is the saw, and you go zzz, and you bring it down. I would just basically do that with bully sticks. My boyfriend was not amused that I was using his tools that way. We'll look at the mussel powder. Great. Buster and Rose. Okay, great. Thanks for explaining. I was a bit nervous because I had a busy week and went to the grocery store last night to get food and fed him unfrozen food. It's fine. And Rhonda, how much do you have to thaw out frozen food before giving it to the dogs? I wonder if it's too cold or too hard for them. Oh, I thaw everything out completely. So I have some food right now thawing for the dogs. And so I don't feed my dogs anything frozen. They get it thawed, but it's coming from the fridge, so it's going to be cold. I know that there are people who maybe they're worried about feeding their dog cold food, or their dog isn't feeling the cold food. If your dog is new to raw, 2 of mine had this issue where they were like, this is cold. They were used to room temperature kibble, and so they weren't really interested in it. So what I started doing in the beginning is I would sear the food. If it's, I know that people say, oh, but it has bone in it. If the bone is finely ground, and you will get that with pre-made raw, then I would just sear it a little bit, a few seconds, and just to heat it up. Sometimes I would heat up bone broth and pour that over it and let that sort of warm up the food a little bit. Sometimes I would just take hot water and pour a little bit of hot water and mix it in the food to take the chill off of it. And I did this just until my dogs got used to their new diet, and then I stopped doing it. So I don't do it anymore. I still give my dogs bone broth, but it's mostly because I like to make bone broth. I have so many bones, and so I need to get through them. But I do feed everything completely thawed out. Garden shears are good for bully sticks. That's a chop saw. Thank you, Diane. Yeah, that's exactly what I would use. Yeah, Johan was not amused. I know construction, I don't want to thaw a huge 5-pound tube of meat. I just want to cut off. You know what? Now that you say that, there are Answers Pet Foods. You can buy their food in bulk, and it comes in super long tubes. And that's what people will do, is they will just basically cut it in little pieces and then freeze those separately, and then pull out what they need instead of just having to deal with the whole tube on its own. Because I've considered buying that for my dogs. Kathy says, I microwave a little water until warm and pour warm water or bone broth over food. Works for picky Frenchie. Yeah, and that's another thing, is it does work for picky dogs too. And Diane also says, I have to pour warm water over the food if they eat it cold, they barf. Oh, very good. And I actually have heard about that, where dogs, there's something about the temperature in the stomach and then the cold food that will make a dog. I haven't heard that in a long time. So thank you for saying that. I completely forgot. Cosmic says, I heard that when the weather is hot and your dog is hot, a cold meal can be good for them. What do you think? I think what you're talking about is food energetics. And so I don't think it's so much a temperature thing. Well, maybe. What I should say this, because I don't know what you're saying. I am not in your head. What you said makes me think of food energetics. And what I've learned is that, like, for instance, right now, well, we're having a very warm winter, but if it's cold, I have a hot dog. And if you can go to herbsmith.com, herbsmithinc.com, they have a food energetics chart, and I'll actually find it and put the link in. food chart. And basically what it'll, if you go through the food chart, you can sort of like get an idea of, is this it? Yeah, this is it. You can get an idea of if you have a hot dog or if you have a cold dog. So Rodrigo is a hot dog. He pants all the time, even in the summer or even in the winter time when he should not be too hot. You know, he likes to lay on, we have hardwood floors. He loves to lay on the hardwood floors. He likes to lay next to doors to, you know, if there's some type of draft, he prefers to be outside even in the wintertime. You would think that he was like a Great Pyrenees. He loves the snow and being outside. So he is a hot dog. There's a whole lot to this. So I'm making it very, very basic. And I actually do have a video with Dr. Besant of Herbsmith about food energetics. But so what I've been told is that in the wintertime, or no, in the summertime when it's hot, I should avoid feeding him hot proteins. And an example of a hot protein is venison. So he can eat venison in the winter when it's cold, but he really should eat cooler proteins in the summer because that will keep him cool. I don't know if that's true or not. I think that there is some value to everything. I don't feed my dogs that way, but there are a lot of people out there, and I do find it very interesting. So I want to see. And FYI, I'm sitting in my car and I'm talking back to you on the screen, thoroughly expecting you to hear me. I hear you. Grace says, my baby passed Thursday morning. Wish I knew better. She might have lived longer. Grace, I am so sorry. That is just absolutely heartbreaking. I still remember when we lost Riley, when we lost Blue, you know, when I look at my dogs now, it's like, yeah, it's kind of, you know, freaky and scary, the fact that, you know, I didn't lose my dogs because, you know, Riley had parvo. When we adopted her, she had already had it. We just didn't know. And Blue was hit by a car, you know, but you still look back and regret so many things and wonder what you could have done differently. And it's hard. And, you know, they say that mourning a pet is worse than mourning, you know, a friend or a family member, because I think we take on so much responsibility when we take a pet into our lives. And so we feel responsible for, you know, their lives, their happiness, how they're doing. And it's really heartbreaking. So I'm so very sorry. Rhonda says, my dog loves to eat snow when they're running, frozen, crushed water. Yeah, my dogs do too. Grace says, hello, Kim. Hope you are doing well. I'm doing great. Thank you so much. Kathy says, food energetics are important. In my opinion, makes a difference in my dog. I think it does. It makes a difference in a lot of dogs. I don't use it for my dogs because I don't feel that it really matters for my dogs. I think my dogs are doing great as is. It's one of those things where I think when I was new to raw feeding and I came across, actually it was before I was new to raw feeding, I came across food energetics when I was trying to figure out why Rodrigo was having so many health issues, and somehow stumbled across food energetics and thought that I could fix it by doing these, you know, changing these diets and understanding the hot and cold proteins and the neutral proteins. And I realized that it was actually more about the food that I was feeding, not about food energetics. And so when I switched to a fresh food diet, a lot of that went away for him. I'm not knocking it. It's just not something that I pay attention to for my dogs. I more follow it because I find it interesting. And I'm curious about it for like humans too. Everyone's giving Grace love. Thank you guys. So it's 58 minutes. That means it's been an hour, way longer than I planned to do this, but luckily I kept power. The wind seems to have died down, and my dogs are patiently waiting for me. I thought they would be trying to beat down the door to get in here by now. So I'm going to let you guys go and, enjoy your Saturday, enjoy your weekend, and I will talk to you next week. I'm going to write down what we're going to talk about next week so that I don't forget. I just super appreciate you guys tuning in and hanging with me today. Grace, again, I am so very sorry. Big hugs to you, because I think we all know what it's like to lose an animal. I mean, it rips your heart out. And I know that the first week, the first month, the first year is the hardest. But it's one of those things where you don't start feeling like not crying until about 2 years in, and it sucks. But it just goes to show how amazing animals are and how much they touch us that we can mourn them so intensely, and that you can tell other people, other strangers, that you lost your dog, and all of a sudden everything goes away. We don't care about politics, we don't care about religion, we don't care about how we feed our dogs. We don't care about anything because everyone understands what it feels like to lose a dog. And so my heart breaks for you, and take care of yourself, and thank you for jumping in, and thank you everyone for supporting her too. Have a great weekend, you guys. Bye. Yay. All right.